Tell us, where in the world are you tuning in from? Big city? Small town? We'd love to know. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Golden Cage. Ethan Sterling traced his fingers across the leather-bound volumes in his parents' library, breathing in the familiar scent that had always brought him comfort. The room held countless memories. Late-night discussions with his father about ancient civilizations, heated debates with his mother about his future, and peaceful hours spent lost in historical texts. Now, with both Arthur and Eleanor Sterling gone, the library felt like the last bastion of normalcy in his world. He pulled out a first-edition history text, a gift from his father on his 25th birthday. Arthur Sterling had built Sterling Industries from nothing, transforming it into a technological powerhouse worth hundreds of millions. Despite his remarkable success in the corporate world, Arthur had always supported Ethan's passion for history, even when it diverged dramatically from the family business. "Your mind is your greatest asset, son," Arthur had told him, handing over the carefully wrapped book. "Whether you use it to build microchips or uncover the secrets of the past, what matters is that you use it well." Eleanor Sterling had been less understanding. A woman of sharp business acumen and even sharper ambition, she had never quite accepted Ethan's decision to pursue academia over industry. "You're wasting your potential," she would say, her voice a mixture of disappointment and frustration. "Sterling Industries needs minds like yours." The click of heels against marble interrupted his reminiscence. Claire, his wife of 3 years, appeared in the doorway. She wore a designer black dress that hugged her curves perfectly, her dark hair styled immaculately despite the somber occasion of the funeral. Even in mourning, she managed to look like she had stepped off a magazine cover. "There you are," she said, her red lips curving into what might have been meant as a smile. "I've been looking everywhere for you." Ethan observed her carefully. Claire had always been ambitious, much like his mother. It was what had first drawn him to her, that fierce determination, that unwavering drive. But lately, something had changed. The warmth that used to soften her sharp edges had disappeared, replaced by an icy calculation that made him increasingly uneasy. "I needed some time alone," he replied, replacing the book on its shelf. The funeral was overwhelming. Claire moved into the room, her heels marking each step with precise clicks. Of course it was overwhelming. Arthur and Eleanor were pillars of the community. Half the tech industry showed up to pay their respects. She paused, studying him with those keen eyes. "But we need to think about the future now, Ethan. About Sterling Industries." Before Ethan could respond, another set of footsteps approached. Thomas Andrews, his childhood friend and the family's lawyer, appeared in the doorway. His usually cheerful face was serious, and he carried a thick manila folder under his arm. "Ethan," Thomas nodded, then glanced at Claire. "Mrs. Sterling, I hope I'm not interrupting." Claire's expression flickered with annoyance, but she quickly masked it. "Not at all. I was just leaving to make some calls." She touched Ethan's arm briefly, a gesture that felt more perfunctory than affectionate, before striding out of the library. Thomas waited until her footsteps faded before speaking. "I have the wills here, Ethan. Your father was very specific about everything." He placed the folder on a nearby table and opened it, revealing neat stacks of legal documents. Ethan sat down heavily in one of the leather armchairs, preparing himself. "What did they leave behind, Thomas?" "They've left you a substantial sum," Thomas began, pulling out several papers. "Enough to live very comfortably without ever needing to work. Your sister Emily receives the same amount. The rest goes to various charities they've supported over the years." Ethan frowned, scanning the documents. "But what about Sterling Industries? I don't see anything about the company here." Thomas's expression grew more serious. "That's because there's nothing to leave, Ethan. Your father sold Sterling Industries 2 years ago." The words hit Ethan like a physical blow. "What? That's impossible. I would have known." "Would you?" Thomas asked gently. "You've been focused on your research, living your own life. Arthur sold to Apex Tech when his health started declining. He didn't want the company to suffer through a prolonged transition of power." Ethan leaned back, trying to process this information. His father had always been pragmatic, always thinking 10 steps ahead. It made sense, in a way that hurt deeply. Why didn't they tell me? Arthur didn't want you to worry, Thomas explained. He knew you'd drop everything to help if you knew how serious things were getting. He wanted you to live your life, pursue your passions. The sound of heels clicking against marble returned, growing louder. Claire appeared in the doorway again, her phone pressed to her ear. She was speaking in low, urgent tones to someone, but stopped abruptly when she saw Thomas was still there. "I'll call you back," she said into the phone, ending the call. Her eyes darted between Ethan and Thomas, then to the documents spread across the table. "What's all this?" "Just going over some details of the will," Thomas replied smoothly, gathering the papers back into the folder. "Nothing that can't wait until tomorrow." He gave Ethan a meaningful look. "Why don't we continue this discussion over coffee in the morning?" Ethan nodded, understanding the unspoken message. "Yes, that would be better." "Thank you, Thomas." After Thomas left, Claire settled into the chair opposite Ethan. "So, what did they leave us?" The word us struck Ethan as odd. His parents had never fully warmed to Claire, though they'd been unfailingly polite. They had seen something in her that he had been too blind to notice, too in love to acknowledge. "They left enough," he replied carefully, studying her reaction. "We won't have to worry about money." Claire's perfectly manicured nails drummed against the arm of her chair. "And Sterling Industries? What about the company?" Ethan made a split-second decision. "We'll discuss all that tomorrow with Thomas." "It's been a long day." Claire's eyes narrowed slightly, but she nodded. "Of course. You're right." She stood up, smoothing her dress. "I'm going to make some more calls. Will you be up soon?" "In a while," Ethan replied, turning back to the bookshelves. "I need some more time here." After she left, Ethan pulled out his phone and typed a message to Sarah, another lawyer friend from college. "Need to talk. Coffee tomorrow? Important." The response came quickly. "Of course. The usual place. 9 a.m.? Ethan sent a quick confirmation, then sank deeper into his chair. The library's familiar scent no longer brought comfort. Instead, it reminded him of all the things he might have missed, all the signs he might have ignored. His father had always taught him to trust his instincts, and right now, those instincts were screaming that something was very wrong. Chapter 2. The Serpent Unveiled. The coffee shop was quiet at 9 in the morning, most of the business crowd having already rushed off to their offices. Sarah was already there when Ethan arrived, a large cup of black coffee in front of her. Her sharp features were pinched with concern as she watched him approach. "You look like hell," she said by way of greeting, pushing a second cup toward him. "I ordered your usual." Ethan sat down heavily, grateful for the caffeine. "Thanks. It's been complicated." Sarah leaned forward, her professional demeanor softening with friendly concern. "Talk to me, Ethan. What's going on?" He took a long sip of coffee, gathering his thoughts. "Did you know my father sold Sterling Industries?" Sarah's eyebrows shot up. "No, I hadn't heard that." "When?" 2 years ago, apparently. To Apex Tech." Ethan watched her reaction carefully. "Thomas told me yesterday, after the funeral." "And Claire? How did she take the news?" Ethan's mouth twisted. "I haven't told her yet. Something doesn't feel right, Sarah. She's been acting strange lately, making lots of phone calls, being secretive." Sarah was quiet for a moment, stirring her coffee absently. "Ethan, there's something you should know." She hesitated, then continued. "I saw Claire last week at Rossini's, the Italian place downtown." "Yes." "She wasn't alone." Sarah's voice was gentle but firm. "She was with a man. They looked intimate, holding hands across the table, speaking closely." The words hit Ethan like a physical blow, but part of him had been expecting something like this. "Are you sure?" "I wish I wasn't." Sarah reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "I saw them in the parking lot afterward. The way they were together. It wasn't professional, Ethan." Ethan withdrew his hand, his mind racing. "Did you recognize him?" "No, but he was well-dressed, expensive watch, that type. They seemed very comfortable together." Sarah paused. "I didn't want to tell you without being certain, especially with everything else going on. But after you messaged me last night." "You did the right thing," Ethan assured her, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside. Did Claire see you? No, I don't think so. I was leaving just as they arrived. Sarah studied his face. What are you thinking? Ethan's expression hardened. I'm thinking it's time I did some digging of my own. Claire's been pushing for information about Sterling Industries, acting like she's entitled to it. Now I know why. Be careful, Ethan. If she is planning something— Oh, I'll be careful, he replied, a cold smile playing at his lips. I'm a historian, remember? Research is what I do best. Sarah nodded slowly. What do you need from me? Legal expertise, maybe. And discretion. Ethan finished his coffee. I need to know exactly what I'm dealing with before I make my next move. You have both, Sarah assured him. But Ethan, what will you do if your suspicions are correct? His expression turned hard, a glimpse of steel beneath his scholarly exterior. Then I'll make sure she regrets ever thinking she could play me for a fool. After leaving Sarah, Ethan made another call, this time to Mark, his father's former IT specialist. They arranged to meet at their old hangout, a bar where they used to play pool after school while Arthur worked late at the office. Mark was already there when Ethan arrived, nursing a beer despite the early hour. His face lit up when he saw Ethan, but quickly turned serious when he saw his expression. This isn't a social call, is it? Mark asked as Ethan sat down. No, it's not. Ethan ordered a water, keeping his mind clear. I need everything you have on Sterling Industries. Sales documents, new tech development, everything. Mark whistled low. That's a lot of sensitive information, man. Your dad is gone, Ethan finished firmly. And something isn't right, Mark. I need to know what I'm dealing with. Mark studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, I kept backups of everything. Force of habit, you know? I'll bring you a hard drive tomorrow. Thank you. Ethan leaned back, his mind already working through possibilities. One more thing, I might need your help with some surveillance later. Nothing illegal, just information gathering. A slow grin spread across Mark's face. Just like old times, huh? Remember when we used to hack the school's grading system? This is a bit more serious than changing gym class grades, Ethan replied, but he couldn't help returning the smile. Are you in? For you? Always. Mark finished his beer. Just tell me what you need. Back at home, Ethan found Claire in the kitchen, typing rapidly on her laptop. She closed it quickly when he entered, but not before he caught a glimpse of what looked like property listings. Productive morning? She asked, her tone casual. Very, he replied, matching her tone. I had coffee with Sarah, caught up on some things. Something flickered in Claire's eyes at the mention of Sarah's name, but she masked it quickly. That's nice. I've been making arrangements for the house. We should think about selling it, you know? Too many painful memories. Ethan studied her, seeing her clearly for perhaps the first time. The calculating look in her eyes, the careful way she watched him, the slight tension in her shoulders, all signs he had missed or ignored before. No rush, he said mildly. We have time to think things through. Claire's phone buzzed, and she glanced at it quickly. I have to take this business call. As she hurried from the room, Ethan allowed himself a grim smile. Let her think she had him fooled. Let her think she was in control. He had learned from his father that the best strategy was to let your opponent underestimate you while you gathered your strength. And Ethan Sterling was done being underestimated. Chapter 3. The trap is set. The next morning, Mark arrived at Ethan's office with an external hard drive tucked safely in his messenger bag. Dark circles under his eyes suggested he'd spent the night preparing the data. Everything's here, Mark said, placing the drive on Ethan's desk. Sales documents, tech development files, internal communications, everything I could salvage from the old servers. Ethan connected the drive to his computer, his eyes widening as folders upon folders of information populated the screen. This is incredible, Mark. How did you manage to keep all this? Mark grinned, dropping into a chair. Your dad always said to keep backups of the backups. I was just following orders. His expression turned serious. But Ethan, some of this stuff, it's sensitive. The new tech your parents were working on before the sale? It's revolutionary. World-changing stuff. Ethan opened several files, scanning through technical specifications and development notes. They were working on quantum computing applications? Among other things, Mark nodded. The sale to Apex Tech was fair. They paid market value plus a premium for the intellectual property. But if someone had known about these developments beforehand, they could have made a fortune. Ethan finished, his mind racing. He pulled up the sales documents, studying the details carefully. The timing of the sale, did anyone else know it was coming? Mark shook his head. Your dad kept it quiet. Only the board and key executives knew until it was done. He hesitated. But there were rumors. People talk, you know? Ethan leaned back in his chair, thinking. I need you to do something else for me, Mark. Something discreet. Name it. I need surveillance software installed on Claire's devices. Phone, laptop, everything. Ethan held up a hand as Mark started to protest. Nothing illegal. Just monitoring software. I need to know who she's been talking to. Mark studied him for a long moment. You think she's up to something? I think she's been playing a long game, Ethan replied grimly. And I need to know exactly what it is. After some discussion of technical details, Mark got to work. Within hours, he had remote access to Claire's digital life. What they found confirmed Ethan's worst suspicions. Messages between Claire and a man named Daniel revealed a relationship going back months. But it wasn't just a simple affair. They had been plotting, planning, discussing ways to get control of Sterling Industries. Look at this. Mark pointed to a message thread. They thought the company was still in play. They had no idea about the sale. Ethan read through the messages, his anger building with each revelation. Claire and Daniel had been planning to push him out, to take control of what they thought was still a family-owned company. They had even discussed ways to handle him if he proved difficult. I found Daniel's social media profiles, Mark announced, pulling up several windows. Daniel Kingston, real estate developer. Drives expensive cars, lives in the Heights, always posing with rich women in his photos. A professional gold digger, Ethan murmured, studying the photos. And Claire fell for it. Over the next few days, Ethan gathered and organized evidence. He set up dummy social media accounts to monitor Daniel's activities, tracked Claire's movements through her phone's GPS, and recorded her conversations with her co-conspirator. The picture that emerged was damning. Claire and Daniel had been meeting regularly at upscale restaurants and hotels, always careful to avoid places where they might be recognized. Their messages revealed not just a romantic affair, but a calculated scheme to gain control of what they believed was still a multimillion-dollar company. They've been sloppy, Mark commented, scrolling through more messages. They were so confident they wouldn't get caught, they barely bothered to hide their tracks. Ethan nodded grimly. Overconfidence. That's always been Claire's weakness. He stood up, pacing the office. She's been acting strange lately, more confident, almost smug. She thinks she has everything figured out. What are you going to do? Mark asked, watching his friend carefully. Spring the trap, Ethan replied, his voice cold. But first, I need to make sure everything is in place. We need to be thorough, methodical. When I move, I want it to be decisive. That evening, Ethan returned home to find Claire on the couch, scrolling through her phone. She looked up as he entered, offering one of her practiced smiles. You're home late. Had some things to take care of at the office, he replied casually, noting how she tried to subtly angle her phone screen away from him. Actually, I need to talk to you about something. Claire's posture shifted slightly, almost imperceptibly tensing. Oh, I'm planning to go to the company tomorrow, Ethan said, watching her reaction carefully. There are some matters that need attention. I'd like you to come with me. Claire's eyes lit up with barely concealed triumph. Of course, darling. What time should we leave? Let's aim for 9, he replied, hiding his disgust at her transparent excitement. It's important that we're both there. Perfect, Claire smiled, already reaching for her phone again. I'll clear my schedule. Ethan retreated to his study, where he spent the next few hours finalizing his preparations. He organized all the evidence Mark had gathered, the text messages, call logs, GPS data, and financial records. He prepared multiple copies, storing them securely in different locations. Then he called Thomas. Everything's ready, he told his friend. Are you sure you want to be there tomorrow? Wouldn't miss it, Thomas replied. Someone needs to witness the fireworks. Besides, you might need legal counsel on hand. After hanging up, Ethan sat in the darkness of his study, thinking about how much his life had changed in such a short time. His parents were gone, his marriage was a sham, and the woman he had loved was plotting against him. But instead of breaking him, these revelations had awakened something else, a cold, calculating fury that demanded satisfaction. He thought about his father's words from years ago. In business, son, it's not enough to win. You have to win so thoroughly that your opponents never think of challenging you again. Tomorrow, he would show Claire and her conspirator exactly what it meant to cross a Sterling. He would demonstrate that beneath his scholarly exterior lay steel and fire. They thought him weak, absorbed in his books and research, easy to manipulate and discard. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. Ethan spent the rest of the evening reviewing the evidence one final time, ensuring there were no loose ends. He had everything he needed, proof of their affair, their conspiracy, their plans to seize control of a company that wasn't even there to take. Tomorrow, he would watch their carefully constructed plans crumble, and he would show no mercy. Because Ethan Sterling had learned a valuable lesson through all of this. Betrayal deserved no forgiveness, and those who sought to destroy him would face destruction themselves. Chapter 4. Confrontation. Sterling Industries' lobby held an eerie silence as Ethan and Claire stepped through the glass doors. Their footsteps echoed against marble, each step bringing them closer to the inevitable confrontation. Claire strode ahead, her designer heels clicking with purpose, while Ethan maintained a calculated distance behind her. The security guard at the desk looked up, confusion crossing his face. "Can I help you?" "I'm Claire Sterling," she announced, her voice dripping with authority. "My husband and I are here for an important meeting." Ethan watched as she pulled out an old Sterling Industries ID card, noting how she'd planned this moment. The guard glanced at the card, then at his computer screen, his brow furrowing. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but this ID isn't valid anymore. The building belongs to Apex Tech now." Claire's composure slipped for a fraction of a second before she recovered. "There must be some mistake. We're here to discuss the transition of power. My husband is Arthur Sterling's son." The guard picked up his phone, making a quick call. After a brief conversation, he nodded. "Mr. Sterling, you and your wife can go up. Someone from Apex Tech will meet you." They rode the elevator in silence. Claire stood tall, shoulders back, radiating confidence. Ethan observed her through the reflective doors, noting how she checked her appearance, practiced her smile, readied herself for what she thought would be her moment of triumph. The executive floor was different now. Gone were the familiar Sterling Industries logos, replaced by Apex Tech's modern branding. A young executive assistant met them, leading them to what had once been Arthur Sterling's office. "Please, make yourselves comfortable," she said. "Someone will be with you shortly." The moment the door closed, Claire made her way to the CEO's chair, settling into it with a satisfied smile. She ran her hands along the armrests, claiming the space as her own. "Finally," she declared, turning to face Ethan. Her hand reached into her designer bag, pulling out a thick manila envelope. "Now I'm the CEO of this company." She tossed the envelope onto the desk. "If you don't agree with this, here are your divorce papers." Ethan couldn't help it. The sheer audacity, the complete and utter delusion of this woman, struck him as hilarious. He started laughing, softly at first, then building to deep, genuine laughter that filled the room. Claire's triumphant expression faltered. "What's so funny?" Ethan composed himself, wiping tears from his eyes. "Oh, Claire," he said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "You really are something else. What are you talking about?" Her fingers gripped the armrests tighter. Ethan pulled out his phone, taking his time as he pulled up the evidence he'd gathered. "Let me show you something interesting." He turned the screen toward her, playing a recording of her conversation with Daniel. Her own voice filled the room. "Once we push Ethan out, Sterling Industries will be ours. He's too wrapped up in his books to see what's coming." Claire's face drained of color. Ethan swiped to the next piece of evidence, text messages discussing their plans to take control of the company, photos of their secret meetings, financial records showing their preparations. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? Ethan's voice remained calm, controlled. Did you think I was that stupid? How did you? Claire started to rise from the chair, but Ethan cut her off. I'm a historian, Claire. Finding and analyzing evidence is what I do. He moved closer to the desk, placing both hands on its surface. But here's the real punchline. There is no company to take over. My father sold Sterling Industries to Apex Tech 2 years ago. Claire's carefully constructed facade crumbled. She looked around the office with new eyes, finally noticing the changed logos, the different decor. No, she whispered. That's impossible. Is it? Ethan pulled out more documents, the sale agreement, transfer papers, everything Mark had provided. While you were plotting to steal my family's company, my father was making sure it would survive his illness. He sold it at its peak, donated most of the money to charity, and left just enough to ensure his children would be comfortable. Claire stumbled back from the desk, her legs hitting the chair. You knew? All this time? Not at first, Ethan admitted. But once I started looking, it wasn't hard to piece together. You and Daniel weren't exactly subtle. He picked up the divorce papers she'd brought. Though I have to admire your confidence, bringing these today. Let me guess. You plan to force me to sign away my rights to the company in exchange for a quick divorce? Claire's silence was answer enough. Ethan pulled out another set of documents from his briefcase. These are my divorce papers, prepared by my lawyers. You'll find them quite different from yours. Given the evidence I have of your conspiracy and infidelity, and thanks to the prenuptial agreement you signed, you'll be leaving this marriage with exactly what you brought into it, nothing. You can't do this, Claire hissed, her composed exterior completely shattered. I already have. Ethan's voice carried a finality that made her flinch. Your lover Daniel has already received copies of everything I have. His clients, business partners, and family will all know what kind of man he really is. As for you, he smiled, cold and ruthless. Well, let's just say your reputation in this city is about to take quite a hit. Claire lunged for her bag, probably reaching for her phone, but Ethan was faster. He pulled out a USB drive. Looking for a way to warn Daniel? Don't bother. By now, he's receiving quite a few interesting calls. It's amazing how quickly people distance themselves when they discover someone's true nature. The door opened, and Thomas entered with 2 security guards from Apex Tech, Mr. Sterling. One of them said, "We'll need to ask you and your wife to leave the premises." Of course, Ethan replied smoothly. We were just finishing up. He turned back to Claire, who stood frozen behind the desk. You wanted to be CEO so badly, Claire. How does it feel to know you've been playing chess while the board was already packed away? The security guards escorted them out of the building. In the lobby, Claire finally found her voice again. This isn't over, Ethan. He turned to her, his expression hard. You're right about that. This is just the beginning of what you've earned. I trusted you, Claire. I loved you. And you plotted to destroy me. He stepped closer, his voice dropping so only she could hear. Now you get to experience what it feels like to lose everything. Chapter 5. The price begins. The divorce proceedings moved with brutal efficiency. Thomas had prepared everything meticulously, and Claire's attempts to fight back crumbled in the face of overwhelming evidence. The prenuptial agreement she'd signed, believing it was just a formality, now became her undoing. In the judge's chambers, Claire's lawyer attempted one last desperate negotiation. Your Honor, my client is willing to— Your client, Thomas interrupted, conspired to fraudulently seize control of a company worth hundreds of millions. We have evidence of her plotting with her lover to force my client out of his own family's business. The prenuptial agreement is clear. Infidelity and criminal conspiracy are grounds for forfeiture of all marital assets. The judge reviewed the evidence files, his expression growing darker with each page. Mrs. Sterling, this is very serious. You're fortunate your husband isn't pursuing criminal charges. Claire shot a venomous look at Ethan, who sat calmly observing the proceedings. Her once perfect appearance had begun to show cracks. Her designer outfit couldn't hide the strain of the past weeks. The prenuptial agreement stands, the judge declared. The divorce is granted under the terms presented by Mr. Sterling's counsel. Outside the courthouse, reporters had gathered. Someone had leaked details of the scandal, and Claire's carefully cultivated social media presence turned against her as screenshots of her messages with Daniel spread across the internet. Ethan watched from his car as Claire pushed through the media crowd, her face hidden behind large sunglasses. She'd lost everything: her status, her reputation, her lover. Daniel had disappeared the moment things got difficult, his own career in shambles after Ethan's evidence reached his clients and business partners. "Are you sure about this?" Thomas asked from the passenger seat. "We could have taken her for everything," pursued criminal charges. "This is better," Ethan replied, starting the engine. "Money she could recover from. A prison sentence would end eventually. But this?" He gestured at the media circus. "Her reputation is destroyed. She'll never rebuild the life she wanted. That's a far better punishment." Back at his office, Ethan reviewed the final divorce papers. The sterling name that Claire had coveted so much was now legally stripped from her. The prenuptial agreement had protected his assets, and her attempts to claim any part of his inheritance had failed completely. Sarah arrived with coffee and a stack of newspapers. "Your front-page news," she said, spreading them across his desk. Each one carried the story of Claire's downfall, her conspiracy exposed, her social standing in ruins. "How's Daniel handling it?" Ethan asked, though he already knew the answer. Sarah's smile was satisfied. His development company lost 3 major contracts this morning. 2 more clients pulled out of deals. His mother, you remember that sweet woman who always defended him? She's not speaking to him after seeing the evidence of what he planned to do to you. Ethan nodded, remembering the look on Daniel's face when the first calls started coming in. The man had built his career on charm and connections, all of which were now poisoned by the revelation of his true character. "Have you heard from Claire?" Sarah asked carefully. "She tried to call yesterday," Ethan replied, his voice devoid of emotion. "I had her number blocked. She'll learn that actions have consequences." "And the charitable trust? Are you still going through with it?" Ethan pulled out his father's old journal, opening it to a marked page. "Yes, it's what they would have wanted. The money they left me will do good work. Help people who deserve it." He looked up at Sarah. Claire thought the sterling name was about power and wealth. She never understood that it was about legacy, about making a difference. The next few weeks passed in a blur of activity. Ethan focused on establishing the charitable trust, honoring his parents' wishes for their fortune to benefit others. He sold the house, unable to face the memories it held, and moved into a modern apartment that held no echoes of his life with Claire. Reports reached him of Claire's attempts to rebuild her life. She'd been fired from her job once the scandal broke. No company wanted to risk association with someone who'd plotted corporate theft. Her social circle, once wide and influential, had shrunk to nothing as former friends distanced themselves from the controversy. Daniel faced his own reckoning. His real estate empire, built on reputation and relationships, crumbled as clients fled. His attempts to reach out to Claire were met with silence. She blamed him as much as he blamed her for their downfall. One evening, as Ethan reviewed applications for the charitable trust's first round of grants, Mark arrived with new information. "They're not taking it well," Mark reported, pulling up surveillance data on his laptop. "Claire and Daniel had a massive fight yesterday. She blamed him for underestimating you. He blamed her for not knowing about the company's sale. It got ugly." Ethan studied the surveillance photos, noting how different Claire looked now. The designer clothes and perfect makeup were gone, replaced by a haunted expression and defensive posture. "They're running out of options," Mark continued. "Daniel's trying to salvage what he can of his business, but no one will work with him. Claire's been blacklisted from most corporate jobs in the city." "Good," Ethan said simply. "They wanted to destroy me. Instead, they destroyed themselves." But something in Mark's expression made him pause. "What else?" "They've been meeting with someone new," Mark said, pulling up more photos. "A private investigator named Victor. He has a reputation for being ruthless, willing to do whatever it takes for the right price." Ethan leaned back in his chair, considering this new development. "They're desperate," he mused. "Keep watching them. If they want to escalate this, we'll be ready." "What do you think they're planning?" "Nothing good," Ethan replied. "But they've already shown their true colors. Whatever they try next, They'll find out I'm not the same man they tried to deceive before. As if to prove his point, his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Claire, trying yet another way to reach him. He blocked the number without reading the message. Let her stew in the consequences of her actions. Let her realize that the quiet scholar she dismissed as weak had been the architect of her downfall. The sun was setting over the city as Ethan finished his work for the day. He stood at his office window, watching the lights come on across the skyline. Claire had wanted power, status, control. She'd thought him an easy mark, a stepping stone to the life she craved. Instead, she'd learned a harsh lesson about underestimating opponents. But something told him this wasn't over. Claire and Daniel, backed into a corner, would lash out again. They'd try to hurt him, try to reclaim what they'd lost. Let them try. He was ready. Chapter 6. The Gathering Storm. Victor Drake sat in his dimly lit office, studying the files spread across his desk. Photos of Ethan Sterling, surveillance reports, financial records, all pieces of a puzzle he was being paid to solve. Claire and Daniel sat across from him, their desperation palpable. He destroyed us, Claire said, her once perfect manicure now chipped and neglected. We need to make him pay. Victor leaned back in his chair, assessing his new clients. They'd come to him with promises of money they didn't have, seeking revenge they couldn't afford. But something about their story intrigued him. Tell me about his weaknesses, Victor demanded. Everyone has them. Daniel shifted uncomfortably. He's not who we thought he was. We underestimated him before. He's ruthless, Claire added, bitterness dripping from her words. Cold, calculating. But he has a soft spot. His sister, Emily. Victor's interest peaked. Tell me more about the sister. They're close, Claire explained. After their parents died, she's all he has left. She's his weakness, his vulnerability. Victor pulled out a fresh notepad. What's her routine? Where does she live? Work? Who does she spend time with? As Claire and Daniel shared everything they knew about Emily Sterling, Victor took detailed notes. A plan began forming in his mind. Not just a simple revenge scheme, but something that could potentially restore his clients to their former glory. Getting to him directly would be difficult, Victor mused. He's too cautious now, too well protected. But through her, he looked up at Claire and Daniel. That could work. Claire leaned forward. What do you have in mind? First, we need resources. Victor named a figure that made both of them flinch. Half up front. We don't have that kind of money anymore, Daniel protested. Ethan made sure of that. Victor's smile was cold. Then find it. Sell whatever you have left. Because without resources, you're just two bitter people with a grudge. Claire's hand went to her throat, where an expensive necklace still hung. One of the few valuable pieces she'd managed to keep. I can get some of it. And Daniel still has his car. Good. Victor stood up, signaling the end of the meeting. Get me the money. Then we'll discuss the specifics. Over the next few days, Victor's team tracked Emily's movements. They photographed her leaving her apartment, monitored her social media, mapped her daily routines. Each piece of information was another weapon in their arsenal. Meanwhile, Claire and Daniel scraped together what they could. Claire sold her jewelry, designer clothes, and handbags. Daniel liquidated his remaining assets, including his prized sports car. Their desperation made them sloppy, a fact that wouldn't go unnoticed. Victor met them again a week later. I found our opportunity, he announced, spreading surveillance photos across his desk. Emily Sterling follows a predictable pattern. Work, gym, home. She has dinner with her brother twice a week. She trusts easily, too easily. When do we move? Daniel asked, his eagerness showing. Patience. Victor's voice carried a warning. We do this my way, or not at all. One wrong move, and Sterling will destroy what's left of your lives. Claire's hands clenched into fists. He already has. We have nothing left to lose. That's where you're wrong, Victor replied. You can always lose more. And if we don't play this perfectly, you will. He outlined his plan, a careful, methodical approach that would leave no room for error. Claire and Daniel listened intently, their faces showing a mix of anticipation and fear. Remember, Victor warned as they prepared to leave, No contact with Sterling. No threats, no messages, nothing that might tip him off. As far as he's concerned, you've accepted your defeat. After they left, Victor made a series of calls, setting pieces in motion. He had a reputation to maintain, a reputation built on successful operations and satisfied clients. But something about this job felt different. Sterling wasn't the usual rich target, soft from privilege and easy to intimidate. He was something else entirely. In his high-rise apartment, Ethan reviewed the latest reports from Mark's surveillance team. Claire and Daniel had been busy, selling off assets, making mysterious meetings. The pieces were moving, but toward what end? They've hired someone, Mark reported over the phone. Victor Drake, ex-military, turned private investigator. He's got a reputation for getting results, no matter the cost. Ethan's mind raced through the implications. Keep watching them. If they're planning something. A beep interrupted him, another call coming in. Emily's number flashed on the screen. I have to go, he told Mark. My sister's calling. Ethan? Emily's voice came through clear and bright. Are we still on for dinner tomorrow? Of course, he replied, pushing aside his concerns. The usual place? Perfect. I have so much to tell you about the new project at work. After hanging up, Ethan stood at his window, watching the city below. Something was coming. He could feel it in his bones. Claire and Daniel were planning something that would need his full attention to counter. His phone buzzed again. A message from Thomas this time. Need to talk. Found something interesting about Victor Drake. Ethan sent a quick reply, then returned to his vigil at the window. Let them plan. Let them scheme. He'd learned his lesson about underestimating enemies. Whatever they were planning, he would be ready. The storm was gathering, but this time, he saw it coming. Chapter 7. The Hunter Becomes Hunted. Ethan's phone clattered against his desk as Emily's terrified voice cut off. The silence that followed seemed to stretch endlessly, broken only by the pounding of his heart in his ears. Her words replayed in his mind. They took me away. Please help me. He punched in Thomas's number, his fingers steady despite the rage building inside him. They have Emily, he said the moment Thomas answered. No pleasantries, no explanations needed. I'm on my way, Thomas replied, understanding immediately. Call Mark. Mark answered on the first ring. What do you need? Track Emily's phone, Ethan commanded, already pulling up the surveillance files on Claire and Daniel. They've taken her. Find her. On it. Keys clicked rapidly in the background. Sending you remote access now. I'm picking up her phone's signal. Ethan pulled up the tracking data on his laptop. The signal pulsed steadily from an industrial area on the city's outskirts. He recognized the location, an abandoned warehouse district that had been slated for redevelopment. Thomas arrived within minutes, his usual polished appearance disheveled in his haste. Sarah's running background checks on Victor's known associates. She's found some interesting connections to that area. Ethan nodded, studying the satellite view of the warehouse district. Mark, what's the exact location? Building 47, Mark replied through the speaker. It used to be a storage facility. Victor's name appears on some old lease documents. They're not as clever as they think they are, Ethan said, his voice cold. He opened his desk drawer, removing a small black case. Inside lay a handgun, a precaution he'd taken after discovering Claire's betrayal. How many entrances? 2 main, 3 emergency exits, Mark reported. Security cameras are offline, but I'm picking up cellular signals from inside. At least 5 different devices. Thomas watched Ethan check the weapon with practiced efficiency. You know how to use that? My father insisted I learn. Ethan's lips curved in a grim smile. He said knowledge wasn't always enough. Sometimes you needed more direct methods of protection. I'm coming with you, Thomas declared. So am I, Mark added through the phone. I can run tech support from my van. Give me 20 minutes to grab my equipment. They met in a parking lot near the warehouse district. Mark's van was packed with surveillance gear, monitors showing thermal imaging of the target building. 5 heat signatures moved inside, 3 clustered in what appeared to be an office area, 2 more patrolling the main floor. Claire, Daniel, and Victor in the office, Mark indicated. 2 hired muscle on guard duty. Emily's signal is coming from the northwest corner. Ethan studied the layout. Thomas, you and Mark handle the guards. I'm going for Emily. What about Claire and the others? Thomas asked. They're mine. Ethan checked his weapon one final time. No one threatens my family and walks away. They move through the shadows between buildings, approaching from different angles. Mark's voice came through their earpieces, guiding them past blind spots and warning of movement. The warehouse loomed ahead, its broken windows like dead eyes in the dim light. The first guard never saw Thomas coming. A quick strike and the man crumpled silently. The second turned at the sound of footsteps, but Mark was ready with a taser. Both guards were quickly secured with zip ties. Ethan approached the office area, hearing voices through the thin walls. Claire's sharp tones cut through, arguing with Daniel about something. Victor's deeper voice rumbled a response. He didn't hesitate. The door burst inward under his kick, revealing the startled faces of his enemies. Claire sat perched on a desk, her designer outfit incongruous in the dusty space. Daniel lounged in a chair, trying to project confidence but failing. Victor stood by a grimy window, his professional mask cracking at the unexpected intrusion. Where is she? Ethan's voice carried deadly promise. Claire recovered first, her lips curving in a smirk. Look who finally showed up. Your sister's been asking for you. You shouldn't have involved her. Ethan raised the gun, aiming steadily at Victor. This was between us. Business is business, Victor shrugged, but his eyes tracked the weapon nervously. Nothing personal. Taking my sister is personal. Ethan's finger tightened on the trigger. Last chance. Where? Daniel broke first. Northwest storage room. She's in the northwest storage room. Coward, Claire spat, but fear had replaced the smugness in her expression. Ethan kept his gun trained on Victor. Thomas, get Emily. Mark, call the police. Tell them we have evidence of kidnapping and human trafficking. He turned his cold gaze to Claire. Your final mistake was thinking I wouldn't find out about Victor's past. Sarah found everything. All the women he's trafficked, all the lives he's destroyed. Victor's hand twitched toward his jacket, but Ethan was faster. A single shot rang out, the bullet embedding itself in the wall inches from Victor's head. Try that again, Ethan invited, his voice terrifyingly calm. Give me a reason. Thomas's voice came through the earpiece. I've got Emily. She's shaken but unhurt. Relief flooded through Ethan, but his expression remained hard. He heard Emily's footsteps approaching, accompanied by Thomas's steady presence. She appeared in the doorway, tear tracks staining her face but her spine straight. The sight of his sister, bound and frightened but unbroken, sent fresh rage coursing through him. Claire started to speak, but Ethan cut her off. Not another word. You lost that right when you involved my sister. Police sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Mark appeared at the door, holding up his phone. They're 2 minutes out. I sent them everything. The kidnapping, Victor's history, all of it. Good. Ethan's gun never wavered. You three are going to sit quietly and wait. If any of you move, I won't aim for the wall next time. Chapter 8. The Final Confrontation. Red and blue lights strobed through the warehouse windows as police cars surrounded the building. Officers swarmed in, weapons drawn, finding a scene that defied their expectations. 3 suspects sat quietly in the office, covered by a man who held his gun with the steady confidence of someone who knew how to use it. Mr. Sterling? The lead detective approached cautiously. We got the files your friend sent. Quite a story. Ethan lowered his weapon slowly as officers moved to secure Claire, Daniel, and Victor. My sister's statement and our evidence should be enough for kidnapping charges. Oh, much more than that. The detective glanced at his phone. Your friend Sarah sent over quite a file on Mr. Drake here. Multiple outstanding warrants for trafficking. The DA's going to have a field day. Victor struggled as officers cuffed him. You don't understand. They hired me. This was their plan. Which makes them conspirators, the detective nodded. Don't worry, there's plenty of charges to go around. Claire maintained her composure as she was cuffed, but her mask cracked when she met Ethan's eyes. You've ruined everything, she hissed. No, Claire. You did that yourself. Ethan watched dispassionately as she was led away. When you threatened my sister, you sealed your fate. Daniel had collapsed into blubbering pleas, begging for mercy, promising to testify against the others. The sight disgusted Ethan. This was the man Claire had chosen over him, a spineless coward who broke at the first sign of real consequences. Emily stood with Thomas and Mark, giving her statement to another detective. She looked exhausted but resolute, answering questions clearly and precisely. Ethan felt fierce pride in his sister's strength. The DA wants to speak with you, the lead detective told Ethan. With the evidence you've provided and your sister's testimony, we're looking at serious time for all three. But Victor's trafficking history is the key. Once we started digging, we found connections to dozens of cases. Ethan nodded. Sarah has more files for you. Bank records, communications, everything that links him to past crimes. Use it all. The warehouse became a crime scene, Tex photographing and documenting everything. Ethan watched as his three would-be destroyers were driven away in separate police cars. Claire sat ramrod straight in the back seat, her face a mask of fury and fear. Daniel slumped in defeat, while Victor stared straight ahead, already calculating angles for deals. Mr. Sterling? A young officer approached. We'll need you to come to the station tomorrow for formal statements. We'll be there. Ethan turned to his sister. Let's go home. The ride back was quiet, Emily resting her head on her brother's shoulder while Thomas drove. Mark followed in his van, still monitoring police frequencies and surveillance feeds out of habit. At Ethan's apartment, Emily finally broke down. I was so scared, she whispered. But I knew you'd come. I knew you'd find me. Always. Ethan held his sister close. I'll always protect you. Thomas and Mark stayed, ordering food none of them really wanted to eat, but knowing they needed to. Sarah arrived with files for the police and DA, her legal mind already building cases that would ensure maximum sentences. Victor's previous victims are coming forward, she reported, checking her phone. Once the news broke about his arrest, women he trafficked started calling police departments across 3 states. He's never getting out. And Claire? Emily asked quietly. Conspiracy to kidnapping, minimum 10 years. Sarah's smile was grim. Daniel's already offered to testify against both of them for a lighter sentence. Not that it will help much. The evidence is overwhelming. Ethan stood by his window, watching the city lights while his friends and sister talked. He had won, completely and finally. His enemies would pay for their crimes, justice would be served through legal channels, and his reputation would remain intact. But it wasn't enough. Chapter 9. The Aftermath. The trial was a media sensation. Claire Sterling, socialite wife of a prominent family, conspiring with her lover to kidnap her sister-in-law. Victor Drake, revealed as a long-time trafficking kingpin, finally brought to justice. Daniel Kingston, the wealthy developer exposed as a cowardly conspirator. Ethan sat in the courtroom each day, his face impassive as testimony and evidence mounted. Emily testified with quiet dignity about her ordeal. Sarah presented financial records showing the conspiracy's evolution. Mark's technical evidence proved premeditation. Claire maintained her composure until the verdict, guilty on all counts. As the judge pronounced her 15-year sentence, her facade cracked. She turned to Ethan, seated in the gallery behind her. I hope you're satisfied, she snarled. You've destroyed everything. No, Claire. Ethan's voice carried clearly in the hushed courtroom. You destroyed yourself. I just made sure you faced the consequences. Daniel received 12 years for his role, his cooperation earning a slightly lighter sentence. He left the courtroom sobbing, his mother watching in shame as her son was led away. Victor's trial was separate, encompassing decades of trafficking charges. The judge showed no mercy, sentencing him to life without parole. As he was led past Ethan, he managed a single nod, acknowledgement from one predator to another that he had been outplayed. In the months that followed, Ethan rebuilt his life. The charitable trust flourished, funding programs to help trafficking victims and support law enforcement efforts. Emily recovered from her ordeal, stronger for having faced her fears. The old Sterling house was sold, its memories too painful to preserve. Ethan moved to a new city, establishing himself in academic circles while maintaining the edge he'd discovered within himself. His research continued, but now focused on historical patterns of justice and retribution. Thomas, Mark, and Sarah remained his closest friends, bound by shared experience and loyalty. They understood the man he'd become, scholar and warrior, protector and avenger. They knew his capacity for both compassion and ruthlessness. One evening, as they gathered for dinner, Emily raised her glass. "To family," she said. "The one we're born with and the one we choose." Ethan looked around the table at these people who had stood by him, who had helped him deliver justice. They were his true family now, forged in crisis and proven in loyalty. To family, he agreed, knowing that he would protect them with the same fierce dedication that had brought down his enemies. The price of betrayal had been high, but the lesson was clear. Ethan Sterling was not a man to be crossed. Later that night, alone in his study, Ethan reviewed the final reports from the trial. Claire, Daniel, and Victor had begun serving their sentences. Justice had been served through legal channels, their punishment handed down by courts and carried out by the system. But Ethan knew the truth. He had orchestrated their downfall from the moment they threatened his sister. His revenge had been complete, devastating, and entirely within the law. They had underestimated him, seen only the scholarly exterior and missed the steel beneath. Never again would anyone make that mistake. Ethan Sterling had emerged from betrayal and crisis transformed. The quiet historian remained, but now tempered by a ruthless strength that would protect what he valued and destroy any threat to his family. Epilogue. 10 years later. The Sterling Foundation's annual gala filled the grand ballroom of the Carlisle Hotel with the city's elite. Ethan Sterling, now in his mid-40s, stood at the podium addressing the gathered crowd. His dark hair had touches of distinguished gray at the temples, but his presence commanded attention just as it had a decade ago. 10 years ago, the Sterling Foundation began with a simple mission: to protect those who cannot protect themselves. Ethan's voice carried across the attentive audience. Today, we've helped thousands of trafficking victims rebuild their lives, supported law enforcement agencies in dismantling criminal networks, and provided educational opportunities to at-risk youth. In the front row, Emily Sterling Matthews sat with her husband, Michael, a prosecutor she'd met during the trials years ago. Their shared experience with justice and recovery had formed the foundation of their relationship. Emily now ran the foundation's victim advocacy program, turning her own trauma into a force for positive change. Thomas Andrews, still Ethan's closest friend and now the foundation's chief legal counsel, watched from the side of the stage. The years had only strengthened their bond, forged in crisis and tempered by shared purpose. His legal expertise had helped shape the foundation's advocacy work, pushing for stronger trafficking laws and victim protection. Mark Chin, who had transitioned from IT specialist to the foundation's head of cybersecurity, managed a global network that tracked trafficking operations and supported law enforcement efforts. His technical skills, once used to expose Claire's betrayal, now served to prevent others from suffering similar fates. Sarah Rodriguez had become a federal prosecutor, specializing in human trafficking cases. Her work with the foundation provided crucial links between law enforcement and victim support services. The lessons learned from Victor Drake's case had informed her approach to dismantling trafficking networks. After his speech, Ethan moved through the crowd, accepting congratulations and discussing the foundation's work. He'd maintained his academic career, becoming a respected professor of history while running the foundation. His research now focused on historical patterns of crime and justice, publishing works that influence policy and law enforcement strategies. In his private office later that evening, Ethan reviewed the latest reports from his network. Claire had served 10 years of her 15-year sentence, recently becoming eligible for parole. Her attempts to rebuild her reputation from prison had failed. The sterling name and wealth she'd coveted remained forever beyond her reach. The woman who had once graced society magazines now faced a future of obscurity and shame. Daniel Kingston had been released after serving 8 years, his cooperation earning him a reduced sentence. He lived in a small apartment in Arizona, working a menial job under his mother's disappointed supervision. His attempts to restart his real estate career had failed. No one would trust the man who had conspired in a kidnapping. Victor Drake remained in maximum security, his trafficking empire dismantled. The evidence Ethan's team had gathered had led to dozens of additional convictions, freeing hundreds of victims. He would never see freedom again. His life sentence a testament to the consequences of underestimating Ethan Sterling. The Foundation's success had brought unexpected challenges. Criminal organizations, recognizing the threat it posed, had attempted various forms of retaliation over the years. Each attempt had been met with Ethan's particular brand of ruthless efficiency. Those who threatened his work or his family learned the same lesson Claire had. Ethan Sterling was not a man to be crossed. Emily entered his office, carrying 2 glasses of whiskey. Reminiscing, brother? Ethan accepted the drink with a smile, reviewing the past to inform the future. How's the new program coming along? The Victim Rehabilitation Center opens next month, Emily replied, settling into a chair. Michael's team has already lined up cases for the legal aid clinic. Their relationship had grown stronger through shared purpose. Emily's marriage to Michael 3 years ago had added another layer of protection to their family. Michael understood the darkness they'd faced and shared their commitment to justice. Thomas called earlier, Emily continued. The new trafficking legislation passed committee. It should reach the floor for a vote next month. Ethan nodded, pleased. The law, informally known as the Sterling Act, would strengthen protections for trafficking victims and increase penalties for perpetrators. It represented years of work by the Foundation's legal team. And Mark's team? 3 new trafficking networks identified in Eastern Europe. Sarah's coordinating with Interpol on the takedown. The Foundation's reach had grown far beyond their initial goals. What had begun as a response to personal betrayal had evolved into a global force for justice. Ethan's resources, combined with his team's skills and dedication, had created something his parents would have been proud of. A knock at the door preceded Thomas's entrance. The DA's office called. Claire's parole hearing is next month. Ethan's expression hardened slightly. She won't be granted parole. The victim impact statements from Emily and the evidence of premeditation will ensure that. The mention of Claire brought memories flooding back. The betrayal, the kidnapping, the trial, all seemed like scenes from another life. Yet they had shaped everything that followed, transforming a quiet scholar into someone who understood the necessity of power and the responsibility it carried. Have you heard about Daniel? Thomas asked, accepting a drink. His latest job application was rejected, Ethan replied. The background check revealed his involvement in Emily's kidnapping. No respectable firm will hire him. It wasn't active vengeance that kept Daniel Kingston in his reduced circumstances, merely the natural consequences of his actions. Ethan had no need to pursue further punishment. The man's own choices had determined his fate. Sarah arrived next, completing their inner circle. 2 more convictions today, she reported. The evidence from Mark's team was instrumental. They spent the next hour discussing the Foundation's ongoing work. Strategic planning mixed with personal updates, Sarah's recent engagement, Mark's new cybersecurity patents, Thomas's growing family. They had all built lives that balanced their commitment to justice with personal fulfillment. Late that night, after the others had left, Ethan stood at his office window. The city spread out below, its lights reminiscent of the night Emily had been taken. But now those lights represented something different, not danger and betrayal, but the reach of the Foundation's work, the lives they'd changed, the justice they'd achieved. His phone buzzed with a text from Emily. Lunch tomorrow? Michael wants to discuss expanding the legal aid program. Ethan smiled as he replied affirmatively. His sister's strength continued to inspire him. She had transformed her trauma into purpose, helping others find the same resilience she had discovered in herself. The Sterling Foundation's success had attracted attention from powerful circles. Government agencies sought their expertise, other organizations emulated their methods, and criminals learned to fear their intervention. But at its core, it remained what Ethan had intended, a force for protection and justice. He had kept his promise to his parents, using their legacy to make a difference in the world. The scholarly passion they had encouraged now served to understand and combat criminal networks. The business acumen they had tried to instill found expression in the Foundation's efficient operation. The photograph on his desk showed the current Sterling Foundation team, dozens of dedicated professionals working across multiple programs. Among them stood his core group, Emily, Thomas, Mark, and Sarah. They had grown from a small band of friends seeking justice into leaders of a global organization. His computer chimed with an alert from Mark's security system. Another trafficking network had been identified, their operations mapped through digital surveillance. Tomorrow would bring planning sessions, legal strategies, and coordination with law enforcement. The work never ended, but each success honored the lessons learned from their own encounter with evil. The Foundation's headquarters occupied the top floors of a modern office building, a far cry from the old Sterling Industries offices where Claire had once dreamed of power. The space hummed with purpose, its occupants united in their mission to protect and serve. Ethan's personal life reflected the balance he'd achieved. His academic work continued to earn accolades, his lectures drawing students interested in the intersection of history and justice. He had dated occasionally but remained unmarried, his focus divided between the Foundation and his chosen family. The betrayal that had once threatened to destroy him had instead forged him into something stronger. The quiet historian remained, but now guided by hard-earned wisdom about human nature and the price of trust. His enemies had thought him weak, failing to recognize that true strength often wore a scholar's guise. As midnight approached, Ethan prepared to leave his office. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to make a difference. The Foundation's work would continue, guided by the principles of protection and justice that had emerged from their own brush with darkness. The security guard nodded as Ethan passed through the lobby. "Good night, Mr. Sterling." "Good night, James," Ethan replied, noting how different this exchange was from that night at the old Sterling Industries building. Now he commanded respect not through name or wealth alone, but through actions and impact. Outside, his driver waited with the car. Another security measure, insisted upon by Mark after certain criminal organizations had expressed their displeasure with the Foundation's work. Ethan had learned to accept such precautions as part of his role. The city at night remained as vibrant as ever, but Ethan viewed it with different eyes than he had a decade ago. Each street held potential victims to protect, criminals to stop, justice to be served. The Foundation's work had given him purpose beyond anything he'd imagined in his academic life. His phone buzzed again, a message from Thomas about the next day's board meeting. The Foundation's growth had necessitated more formal structures, but their core team remained as close as ever. They had all found their calling in this work, their skills complementing each other in pursuit of their shared mission. Arriving home, Ethan checked his security systems, another habit born of experience. His apartment, while luxurious, was chosen primarily for its defensive features. Mark had personally overseen the installation of cutting-edge security technology. A package waited on his desk, advanced copies of his latest book, Justice Through History, Patterns of Crime and Punishment. The academic work incorporated lessons learned from their own experiences, though names and details had been changed to protect privacy. Tomorrow would bring another day of balancing roles: scholar, protector, leader, brother. The Foundation would continue its work. Emily would counsel survivors, Thomas would fight legal battles, Mark would track criminals, and Sarah would prosecute wrongdoers. They had all grown beyond what they'd been when Claire's betrayal set them on this path. That crisis had revealed their true strengths and forged bonds that only grew stronger with time. The price of betrayal had been high, but its lessons had built something lasting and meaningful. Ethan Sterling, once dismissed as merely a wealthy scholar, had become someone else entirely, a man who understood both books and battles, who could quote historical texts while dismantling criminal empires. His enemies had taught him the value of power. His friends had shown him how to use it wisely. The night grew late as Ethan reviewed one final report. Another trafficking ring identified, another opportunity for justice. Tomorrow would begin with the Foundation's morning briefing, where his team would plan their next moves in the endless fight against those who preyed on the vulnerable. This was his legacy now, not just the sterling name or wealth, but a force for positive change in the world. The betrayal that had aimed to destroy him had instead created something powerful and enduring. The price of betrayal had been paid, and from it had grown the price of justice. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.